Hello. I wanted to spend a few moments today talking about how we worship God and why we worship God and how to do so when there's been death, loss, depression, when it's dreary and rainy outside, um, and and there's other situations, financial struggles, political upheaval, just craziness in the world. How do we worship God, and why do we worship God? And one of the statements that I say is that I want to help people worship well. And how do we do that? And I was looking through the Jesus is in book, looking for the phrase "worship God well," and I came across page 77. And I realized that there's people on Facebook who have no idea that I actually wrote a book, and it's for anybody. So this particular page 77 talks about learning to worship through prayer, and prayer technically is just talking to God. So we're just going to talk to God, and to worship God is to tell Him what you appreciate about Him and to honor Him. And in our culture in the United States, we don't really honor people well, and we don't have a hierarchy of government where we give a lot of honor to people or respect to people. And even in Sunday school, I was talking about how we are raising a culture of people, children, to say don't trust anybody and question everything. And so they don't trust, they don't respect. Everybody's questioning, and it's becoming more and more rampant. And so, how do we then worship a God that we can't see? Now, in other cultures where there's a king or a queen or somebody who they're forced to worship, you're forced to kneel, bow, and that's normal. Then it would be easier to say, okay, these are the behaviors that we use to worship God. And so, how do we do that in our culture? And so what I said in this particular section is to pray the following out loud: God, you are good. You do want the best for me. You understand my pain and you hurt with me. You care enough to keep me on the path. You want to be my friend. You want me to feel safe. And you will help me experience the person that you created me to be. Those are words that we're saying to God about who He is. And so there's a difference in my mind between praise and worship. So praise is telling somebody else how great somebody is or how great something else is. And we're saying, oh, this is just so fantastic. Like I'm on a vacation. You should go here and see this. This is so fun. It's really exciting, or it's very beautiful. So we're praising it. To worship it means that we give it the highest honor. We give it a lot of respect. We just put it above everything else, and we worship it. So if we applied those same things to God and say, okay, I can tell other people about God and say He is just so awesome, and He's done this and He's done that, and He's created the planets and the fruits and the trees and the animals, and we can praise Him to other people. But how do we worship Him? How do we get on our knees, get before Him in quietness and say, wow, God, you are so amazing. You are so powerful. You're so wise. And so I differentiate that from our circumstances, because the attributes of God do not change because of our circumstances. And so when we're in the midst of funerals and financial distress or loneliness or abandonment, and we're like, this is so not fun, how am I expected to worship God in the midst of this? And then we get into the whys. And so I learned many years ago, don't ask why. I don't always get that right, and occasionally I still ask why. And I try to catch myself and say, okay, don't do that. Because I honor God because of who He is. He is the highest God of all gods. And if you look at all the gods that are worshipped around the world, our God is the highest God. There is no other God before Him or higher than Him. And so we worship God because He exists. And so I had a friend who I told the Creation Day story to, and he said, that's really great. Not a believer. And he said, but why would I worship God? No, he said, why? What about people who aren't seeking spirituality? And I said, well, you probably wouldn't end up in my office. I do see non-Christians, but not very many. And he said, well, that's probably true. And I thought that was such a lame answer. And so weeks went by, and then we actually were going to an event together. And when I saw him again, I stopped and I said, I need to tell you something. I said, I really thought about what you asked me. And I said, the answer why you would believe God, worship God, is because he exists. And that's the highest reason. And he said, well, that's what you believe. I said, yes, but you are asking me, and I believe this is true. And so when it comes down to the very end of everything, we worship God because of who he is, that he does exist, and he is worthy of honor, he is worthy of praise. And even if he doesn't ever give us what we feel we deserve or what we want, or if we don't feel justice is occurring, it doesn't diminish his character qualities. And so to be able to worship well is stepping away from our circumstances and stepping really out of our own self and saying, I'm going to take a moment and worship God for who he is, and really focus on who he is. Not what I want, not what I feel like I deserve, but on who he is. And so I ask people to write down 5 things that you value about God's character, whether it's his holiness, his faithfulness, and 5 things, and then pray and thank him for those things, and spend 12 seconds telling him why you like that thing. And so my one is creativity. I love nature. I love being outdoors, and to be able to say, I love all the things that you've created and the fun things that I get to see and the beauty all around me and the variations of everything for 12 seconds. 5 things for 12 seconds each is 1 minute. And if you spend 1 minute, just 1 minute, honoring God, then he will be able to speak into your heart just amazing things to encourage you and to settle your soul in the midst of trying circumstances. And it's hard. It's hard because the enemy works overtime with your emotions and manipulating your emotions and trying to get you to focus on things that are not positive or encouraging. And so to be able to quiet yourself and say, okay, and I tell people, write it down, because it's easier if you write it down. Write down the 5 things and then look at them and speak them out loud and say, God, I thank you for this because, and say it out loud, and do it every day. And it will help you refocus and recenter, and it might take a while for you to do that, to ignore the other troubling things that are happening in the world or in your life, and it will be challenging, and your heart is going to be distracted, and the enemy is going to try to infiltrate your mind with things that will keep you from being able to honor God, because it's the last thing that he wants you to do, is to worship well. And so I hope that in the midst of the circumstances that you have right now, that you can take a very practical tool and be able to worship God. And with the holidays coming, it can be very stressful for so many people. And to take a moment every day and to say, God, I'm going to sit here with you and just thank you that you are the one that is really truly in control and not me. And that you are powerful and wise and merciful and gracious, that you have given us a plan to save us from our own sinful selves, and help me to make it through one more day and to be grateful for who you are. And so may God bless you on your journey, and I'll see you again soon.